what's up? My name's Samuel Leeds. I'm a property investor, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the risk of buying an off-plan apartment. I regularly see a lot of property investors, even celebrities, footballers, and they're buying into a scheme, and it might be something that's not been built yet. Now, this is particularly scary when you're buying off-plan and overseas. I have seen so many people lose money buying off-plan properties. When someone says to me, I'm buying off-plan, and it's overseas, I'm just like, oh my goodness, because I've seen it lose money so many times. Now, am I saying that off-plan's always bad? No. Am I saying that overseas is always bad? Absolutely not. But can it be devastating? Yes. Can you lose money? Yes, you can. So this is why off-plan can be a little bit risky. Number one, when you're buying an off-plan apartment, you don't know exactly how long it's going to be before the property is built. So many people that have bought off-plan or agreed to buy off-plan, they're waiting years for the property to actually be built, and it's completely out of your control because it depends on the builders, it depends on what happens. Also, let's say it takes 2 or 3 years, you don't know what the situation in the economy is going to be in 2 or 3 years. So it might be that in 2 or 3 years, you can't get a mortgage. It might be that the market's dropped. So it's just a little bit risky, in my opinion, agreeing to buy off-plan. Another thing that's happened when I've seen people buying off-plan is the developer will be developing a big apartment block, and he'll sell off-plan apartments to maybe overseas investors or whatever, or footballers, and they'll be sold because of what they think it's going to look like because of the CGIs. A CGI means a custom computer-generated image. So they'll show you what the end product is going to look like, what the spec is going to be, but you don't actually know for sure if it's going to be like what was promised. And what they'll often do, and this is something to be really mindful of, is these developers will sell you an off-plan apartment in a block, and they'll give you a guaranteed rent for 2 years. So they'll say, right, you're buying this apartment, it's a £200,000 apartment, and it should be ready in 12 months, but we're not 100% sure. It should look like this. Here's the computer-generated image, but we're not exactly sure of the spec and then you then put down a deposit, a non-refundable deposit. You wait for years, and then when it's finished, apartments might be out of fashion. When it's finished, it might be a little bit more than you thought. You might struggle to get a mortgage, who knows? But they'll give you a guaranteed rent, and they'll say for 2 years, we'll give you £1,000 a month rent. Okay? So you think, okay, that sounds good. And you work the return on investment out on that figure. But what often happens is, the going rent isn't £1,000 a month. The developer has overinflated the rent. Really, the rent's 700 quid. But the developer has worked out that they can afford to subsidise the difference and basically make up the £300 a month for 2 years. What's that? Well, £300 a month for 2 years is 3,006 times 2. It's about £7,200. So in their mind, they've sold you an apartment for £200,000 off plan. They've got your money up front for the deposit. It might not be ready for another few years, who knows? They've told you that they'll guarantee that the rent's going to be £1,000 a month for the first 2 years. In your mind, you're thinking, after 2 years, you might be able to get more rent. They've guaranteed £1,000, but it's really only 700. So they're subsidising the difference, and they're selling you an overinflated product. You work out the yield is good, but actually after 2 years you realise the rent is only £700. So I don't really necessarily think that off-plan is a good idea unless you really know what you're doing. But the problem with off-plan is a lot of people that buy off-plan tend to be investors that don't know what they're doing. They get suckered in by the guaranteed rent for 2 years. They get suckered in by computer-generated images, and they like the idea of owning something new and shiny. But actually, are these off-plan apartments necessarily a good investment? Or often they are not. And the reason overseas investors get so suckered in is because it's like, oh, I want to own something in Jamaica. But when you don't know the area, there's so many problems that can happen. And the rules and the laws can be different. So again, you get suckered in. Oh, it looks brilliant. I want to buy something in the Caribbean and it's going to look like this. And you see the images and it's all emotion and you're trying to cut corners because you think, oh, it's all done for me and it's guaranteed. But when you're trying to cut corners and you're buying based on emotion, just be really careful. So that is my warning to anybody thinking about buying an off-plan, or even worse, off-plan overseas apartment or new build property. Now, again, flip side is there can be good sides. I'm not saying it's always bad, but just be careful. Hope this video helps, and I'll see you next time.